All right, we are live. Folks, welcome to the High Performance Leadership Series, powered by Atlassian and Accelerate. I'm Shane Gallen, and we are delighted today to have Ruth Ameku with us. Welcome, Ruth.
Hi, thank you.
Um, so today we're going to get into a few questions, and we're going to have a bit of a quick fire round at the end as well, Ruth. And for anybody that's joining, please feel free to just add your questions in the comment section, or even just let us know where you're joining from, and we'll aim to get to the questions if we have time throughout the session. So, Ruth, let's get started. I'm always really interested in when people have these conversations and it completely changes the path they go on, in their career or in their life in general. And I know you've said once before that you've had a similar conversation, and it was at the Black Business Show. Can you take us
Yeah,
back to that moment?
yeah, absolutely. So, just a bit of context. I was actually living in Birmingham when this whole thing started. And I had a role and I was good at it. I was a marketing executive. And I just had a bit of itchy feet. I was growing out my role, and at this time I had been listening to Steven's podcast like on my lunch breaks or during my working hours. And I heard that he was going to be the keynote speaker at the Black Business Show. So in true fashion, I ran down there at the day. I don't even think I had tickets for the show until the night before. So it was right up until the last hour that I got my ticket, and I woke up very early and got tickets to go down there and see him. So it was somewhat planned and somewhat very unprepared. I went there and I decided that I was going to pitch to him while I was on the train, because I wanted to leave my role. And at this time, applying for jobs weren't very successful. So I stayed in the same seat for the entire duration of the show. I didn't get up, I didn't move, I didn't network, I didn't want to talk to anybody else. I didn't care who else was in the room. I was just waiting for Steven to come. And when he finally came in, I decided to sit right on the edge so that if the mic was going down the aisle, I could grab it, but then close enough to the front for him to see me. And as soon as they said Q&A session, I jumped up onto my feet. My friend grabbed the mic and I just shoot my shot. And it was successful, fortunately.
That's pretty cool, and it's almost sometimes you think about these things like it's meant to be, but obviously there's like you need to put the energy in, like you need to be ready, you need to be prepared. So like preparing the whole way down the train, but getting your tickets last minute, it's I find these moments just super exciting and inspirational. So like what like sorry, you wanna say something?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So like how like what were you sort of thinking like in terms of like building that confidence up to approach Stephen? Like what sort of thoughts were going through your head in that moment?
Yeah, I think the deception is that I'm constantly confident. I was equally as nervous as anybody would be. I didn't
Mm,
know anybody in the room. Nobody knew me. Um, anybody that was in the room on the day, I always say you would have seen me visibly shaking with the mic because I was so scared that I was talking in front of so many people. And anyone who's watched this video, and it's everywhere. I speak very fast when I'm scared and when I'm nervous. I speak very fast, and it's my superpower, is what I say. So I think the deception is you have to be 100% confident 24/7. It's not true. Whenever you're doing something that is going to move your career forward, there'll be an element of fear. There'll be an element of being uncomfortable. There'll be an element of not knowing what you're doing. I always love to say that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm learning as I go along, and that's the beauty of the journey. And that's okay. It's absolutely fine. So I think there's, yeah, the deception is, you're not always going to be confident. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and do it while you're scared. And I always say feel the fear and do it anyway, because that's what I live by. Because if you wait till you're confident, you may never do it. And confidence comes from doing things.
mm.
So I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same. Like if you don't feel uncomfortable, like I don't feel like you're progressing or growing, you're not in that risky position.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of that I hear a lot of people talk about like that sort of when you're in that moment and you maybe, you are nervous, there's all like there's a excitement there as well, right? It's because you're in this
Yeah,
position. So you kind of have this like mixed feeling where it's nervousness, but it's also excitement.
yeah.
Mm.
All good feelings.
Yeah, definitely. I it's something I always think about as well. If I'm not feeling that feeling enough, or if I'm, frequently enough, I'm not progressing um in any aspect of what I'm doing. So you've grabbed them, or you've not grabbed the mic, you've got the mic, you've been speaking to Stephen. What's happening like immediately after that? And how quickly did things change from that moment?
Yeah, so a few things did change immediately after meeting Stephen, and then a couple of things took like the natural progression of time. So I did reach out to like his management team immediately after, and because Stephen was going on a ski trip with his team, it was a little bit hard for me to kind of come into the office, because a lot of the team were unavailable. And to be fair, there's a lot of travel involved with working at the Diary of a CEO. So I think it was just hard to kind of get everyone in the office to not accept me, but for me to actually come in and start. So a few things that did change immediately was I think I got immediately noticed. So I got loads of LinkedIn requests. I was invited to loads of different things. I think I my personal brand grew up a lot more in that short stint. Um, and then got boosted again when he made the YouTube video about me and made me a thumbnail. So I've had lots of peaks in that season, but it took several months actually for me to actually from meeting Stephen on that day to joining the team took maybe 8 months or 9 months. It wasn't overnight. I had to be really, really patient,
Yeah.
and pester the team for a while. But it wasn't anyone's singular fault. There was just a lot going on, and Flight Studio wasn't born yet. Flight Studio was just about to come into fruition, and I was coming in,
Okay.
and then there's a lot of change consistently. So I just came in at the inception of it all. But yeah, it wasn't overnight for sure. I had to wait.
And that's like it's super exciting being there like before the thing starts or as it's starting and being part of
Yeah.
that energy.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Really cool.
I can imagine. It must be yeah, it must be crazy just this brand explosion as well. So, from that moment and then just all of a sudden this massive explosion of of your brand like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. And I think after taking that risk with Steven, I gained confidence to grab the mic more and more. So I think a month after I then met another entrepreneur called Patricia Bright. And it just kept happening. I felt like I had unlocked a new wave of like meeting people, and that was really good. So I think also once you've done something once, it doesn't feel as scary once you do it again.
Yeah, and I suppose like when you see like the benefit that can come from taking that what appears like a big risk in the moment and even like reflecting back, and as you say, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. Um, and I love this phrase, just grab the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to take that away from me.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I love it. So in terms of the diary of the CEO, what surprised you the most about working inside Studio and like on the diary of a CEO?
Yeah, this is a really meaty question, so I'm going to try and break it up into a couple of different things. So I think the first thing that I was really surprised by is that the team's very small. There were only about 20, 30 people in the room, and the room was so small that you could see everybody from every angle. It was a really tight team, very agile. Everybody did lots of little bits, and they were all very hardworking. The company doesn't operate like a normal organization in my eyes. We had different things to do every day. So some days I would go in and I'd be looking for guests for the podcast. So just to give you some context, as an intern, they gave me the flexibility to work in every single department. So I wasn't always with Steven. Sometimes I'd be with the guests. Sometimes I'd be with Paul Brunson. Sometimes I would be scheduling his LinkedIn posts in. So every day was very, very different. But that didn't change the fact that, or I guess it impacted the fact that the organization operates very differently. Mondays, sometimes the team would go out for Pilates in the middle of the afternoon and then come back and have lunch together and then get on with some work. And I've never worked in a team where like there was a lot of fluidity with your activity, and they were really really big on doing lots of like fun actionable tasks together. So I remember one of the days we went to go and play football as a team, and they're very very big on having community events internally. So I think maybe one of the reasons why they work so hard, or they have such a strong ethic, is because they like each other. They really enjoy working with each other, and you can tell because there's a lot of activities pushed in. And I've never seen an organization invest so much money in team building activities. I think most organizations maybe do it like once a quarter or maybe once or twice a year, but they do it multiple times a week. So I think that really shows that, you know, if you invest in your team, it shows in their output. So I think that's probably the first thing. The second thing is I've also never worked in a team that's so focused on staying ahead. They would do everything in their power to be ahead of the game. They were very invested in AI. Even when I arrived, they were very invested in finding efficient ways to work, finding new technologies to implement into the team. And they would celebrate it. Every time I posted anything in the chat to do with, you know, maybe making something more efficient or implementing a new guest in, it was immediately celebrated. They would make such a big fuss about little changes that even I suggested. And I just thought, you know, I'm an intern. I'm not a high, I don't have a high position in the company, but it didn't matter to them. What mattered to them is that change was being made and that they were moving forward. So I think some of those things really impacts the culture of the team. And I'm
Mm.
not surprised that they're so successful because the way that they operate isn't the way that I've seen a lot of other companies operate. But on a day-to-day basis, that was also again very different. Some days I would meet. I remember when Simon Cowell came in for his recording, and I just thought, oh wow, like I get to meet celebrities on a daily basis because
Mm.
it's a part of my job. Or I would
Yeah.
watch the podcast regularly. My job was now to watch it live with Steven in the room, and that was really fun as well. I felt like I was always in his pocket. Like if he was going to a speaking engagement, I'd be with him. If he was going out for a shoot, I they would just take me along wherever he was going. So it was really like a really really fun experience.
It's really cool. Like so like three core things there that you're talking about is like this exposure to more than I suppose what the role defines in like in a more like sort of traditional sense that maybe sets boundaries in terms of like your exposure and your experience in the organization and like building skill sets. Then that's real like team building, like just getting to know people beyond the job. So, you know, building like really building like bonds and trusts with people so that you
Yeah.
can like just that ability to trust each other as a team, I think's massive. And then being really close to the actual work. So like sitting with Stephen in those sessions, not just watching it afterwards, but being in there and seeing what's happening live. And I really like that culture of like just everybody like being ahead of the game. I really like that term, just being ahead of the game. There's a few great ones today. Grab the mic, be ahead of the game. But
Yeah.
yeah, those like small improvements that just like over time just build up and build up and build up. So it sounds like quite an experience working there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially because I didn't have a normal role. So
Hmm.
was that's what made the difference.
Yeah. So what was like so like out of that whole experience, what was like the what could you say there's like one thing that's is super important like in that sort of like space in terms of how you work, or is it kind of like a combination of all those things?
Yeah, I'd say probably the number one thing that makes, you know, the Diary of a CEO, Flight Studio, Flight Story, or a lot of the companies that Stephen has built different to a normal organization is the 1%. So I noticed this quite early on. They have like a internal group chat. I think it's called 1%. It's called something on the lines of 1%. And what they do is they post quite similarly to what I said before, but into more detail. They post very minuscule changes that they can implement into the business that improves any aspect. So this
Mm.
could be it could be as small as if I if an employee reached a certain number of followers in the team, that would be immediately celebrated. If they realize that they found a new platform, for example, I use Fireflies, which is an automatic AI note taker, to take notes in my meetings so that I don't have to. That would be posted in a group chat. That would be immediately implemented, immediately celebrated. So they're constantly focused on the very, very, very small things that improve the culture, that improve the company, that improve efficiency, or that gets them ahead of the game. And Stephen talks about this in a lot of detail because I think a lot of organizations are very focused on big changes, but
Mm.
big changes don't happen overnight. And a big change is actually a combination of lots of small changes, lots of tiny improvements, and that actually births a very big, beautiful improvement. And I think because they're so focused on the little things, and the little things are the most actually achievable things, people are more motivated to do that than to change an entire system overnight. They don't do that. They just focus on everyday small improvements until they're winning. And so far, that has been proven to be a correct hypothesis.
Yeah, that I really like that. There's just like there's a book on it as well, but this like sort of Japanese like way of thinking called Kaizen, where it's about that. It's about these like really small, like 1% type things, improvements. So you see them improving, but you also get that experience of achieving something in terms of progress. So with the Diary of the CEO, what are some of the unsung rules that make the show a success behind the scene? I know I'm saying rule here, and I know we don't have like normal rules, but yeah, what are some of the who are some of the unsung rules?
I think a big part of it comes into guest selection. They're
Okay.
very meticulous about the guests that come onto the podcast. I remember when I put a couple of so one of the weeks I was a part of the guest booking team, and I could put forward any guest that I thought was appropriate or that would do really well on the podcast. And it's very, very, very finely gone through the team and then through Stephen himself. So I think even though they have a guest booking manager or an entire department focused on just getting the right guests, I mean,
Mm,
that makes a big difference. I think in most podcasts, it's just usually the host that searches the guest and then they contact them directly. But I think people have to remember the scale of a podcast. They have an entire team dedicated on booking the right guest, an entire team focused on researching that guest, analyzing their lives, finding out, the secrets, the ins and outs, the things that you wouldn't want to find. They have two entire departments focused on that. Automatically, that's going to make a difference because they're now focused on their zone of genius. Steven's
mm.
focused on having the conversation, and then the entire departments are focused on finding every single piece of information to make that podcast great. Now, podcasts have become very popular. So now everyone's trying to look at what makes the difference. And what makes the difference is the information you discover. And that's because a lot of the guests are currently being recycled on multiple different podcasts. So what would make you different is the information you provide. So if you can find out some information about a guest that isn't on any other podcast, that's going to make a big difference. Because Stephen has had a few guests on his podcast that have been on other podcasts, but he's able to draw out more information about them. He's able to get them to say things that they wouldn't naturally say. And they have triggers. For example, recently they've been experimenting with giving out gifts to the guests. So this can be like a picture of their
Yeah.
background. This can be a picture that will draw out a lot of emotion from them. But the only reason why the team knows that that picture is going to draw out emotion is because they've done really good research on their background or their parents or their upbringing or situations that would have caused them trauma. So I think if you're a podcast host or you have your own podcast, you have to put in the effort to make sure that you think that this guest is gonna perform the way that you think, but then also giving them the room to just speak from their hearts. And I think Stephen's really good at just being quiet, just letting
Mm.
them talk, just letting them pour out. The podcast recordings are about 2 hours or 1 hour and a half on YouTube. In real life, it's about 4 hours.
Okay.
Concise. So if you think about it, the amount of information that we've had to draw away to be able to have a 2 hour podcast. I know people think 2 hours is already a lot, but you have to understand on our end, it's 4 hours or 3.5 hours just sitting there listening. And if you let people kind of pour out their hearts, you can draw out the gems yourself. But then if you cut them off early, you might cut off what would have been a really, really valuable part of the podcast. So there's lots of bits in that. given the guest enough time to kind of like speak, but then there's also an element of, are you doing the research? Are you finding the guest that you think is appropriate? Is this guest even the right niche for your podcast? There's lots of things that go into it, but I do think that guest booking and guest research has a really big part of what makes the podcast successful.
Yeah, that like I definitely noticed. See what you're saying, like around the person, the guest, and the difference that you'll maybe see somebody on the Diary of the CEO versus any other, like, or not any other, but like some other podcasts. There's a notable difference in both, like the information that you get from them is super valuable, and that space, like I think what Steven Bartlett does in terms of like holding the silence, pause and just like mirroring back some words is he's definitely he's definitely great at his craft in terms of hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of the career moves, you've worked across content, events, social campaigns. Um, like do you have like a framework or like principles or like anything that you use in terms of like helping you say yes or no to different opportunities? Yeah.
So I think this is something that even I'm still working on now. I'm really fortunate to have lots of opportunities that I want to do. And I think when you're young and when you're still in the season of like trying to figure things out, everything looks shiny and gold, but we all know that everything that shines isn't gold. So I think one thing I try to focus on is this going to move me forward, or is this like a nice to have? Because some projects are a nice to have, like it's, it makes your CV look nice, but some projects, and some of these projects will pay less, but they will move you so much more forward. They will put you in the right rooms, you will network a bit better, and you gain a lot from just attempting something new. So I think that's a big part of, is it just a nice to have, or is it actually tangibly progressively moving my career forward? And I'm at the place where I'm mainly accepting things that will move me forward over things that are just nice to have. And I think, just going back to Stephen's podcast for a second, I had to I had a pay cut in order to accept the internship with Stephen, because I was working full time in an organization, and then I've gone to accept an intern salary. So that was a career move that moved my career forward, but I've had to make some sort of sacrifice. And I'm constantly making the sacrifice while I can afford the time. And I think, fortunately for me, and I speak for young people, like I'm not married, I don't have children. So I'm playing chess right now with my career. Like, I'm taking risks. I will drop everything and move to London, which I did. And I'll do it again because I can afford to take that risk. So I think, especially when you're not necessarily about age, but when you have the capacity to take the risk, I take the risk because it does pay off. And you don't know what will happen if you say yes.
I like, yeah, it's kind of coming back to the point you're making around like the risk around like making a decision to step up and speak to Stephen. Like if you just stay there and be like feel safe, I suppose, and you don't take that risk, then the time's never really going to come. That's going to be perfect, right? So just jump into it. Um, in terms of like career decisions that's felt risky at the time but paid off massively, I know Flight Studio is definitely one of those, and Diary of the CEO. Was there any other any any other decisions like that in your career that's had a similar payoff?
Yeah, so I think I've had a couple all around the same season, but after I left Flight Studio, I was looking for another role, but not exactly. I was fairly stubborn at this point because I think I had moved from Birmingham to London to take this role, and I wanted something equally as exciting. And I wasn't prepared to do a normal 9 to 5 in a normal organization after working for Flight Studio. It was really hard for me to go back to what felt, or not ordinary, but what felt similar to what I had just come out of. So I took a risk and I decided to stay in London. This was a month after the end of my internship. So I was living on my savings account for a couple of months, and then I emailed Timothy Armoo. So Timothy Armoo is a British entrepreneur. He sold his company Fanbytes for a couple million. And I emailed him, and he was just looking for, I think, an operations executive. And I applied because, again, it wasn't about the role. It wasn't even about the salary at the time. It was about being with Timothy. It was about being with another entrepreneur that had done something tangibly successful, that would now know my name and that I could learn from. That's why I took the role. I didn't care much about what he wanted me to do on a day-to-day basis. As long as I could meet the criteria, I didn't care. And that was my plan. So that was another risk. Fortunately, it worked. He responded to my email and hired me, I think like 7 days after. It was very quick turnaround. I think I just managed to convince him that I was good. But after I had joined, he then made me his content manager. So I was scheduling in his LinkedIn posts, scheduling in his Instagram posts. We were going to shoots. And I learned a lot about business and money while I was with him. But that was also another risk because I didn't have a job at this time in London. I was searching, and the risk was not going back home and just trusting that this would all work out while I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do next after working for Flight Studios. So I think fortunately my risks have all paid off. In the moment, I was like obviously quite stressed out, thinking what's going to happen next, what am I going to do? But I don't know where my comfort zone is because I haven't been there for so long. So
It's just keep reshaping that comfort zone. So like with Timothy, what was the one golden nuggets that you kind of like took away from that experience?
yeah, so Timothy's huge on mindset. And he's huge on energy. So I think one of the reasons why he hired me is because like I just came on full force. Like I was like, "Hey Tim, like I can do this and I can do that and you should trust me." And I was like really happy, jolly, and I think he was bought into the person before he could even like I guess get to know me a little bit better. I made a really really good first impression, and I was just really really forward, like the same energy that I brought to Stephen. I mean, I took it straight to Timothy, and he listened. And I think people forget that your attitude is the first thing they're going to see before they see what you're capable of doing. So I think I sold myself quite well. I think secondly, it would probably be, and they buy into that. I think they all do actually, now that I think about it. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs buy into who you are before what you can do. Because and Stephen didn't know anything about me. I could have been a useless employee. I wasn't, fortunately, and I worked very hard, but he didn't know that. He just hired me anyway. So I think yeah, attitude plays a bigger part than you realize. The other thing is that Timothy, entrepreneur wise or like business wise, entrepreneurship wise, my apologies. He was very big on selling to, and everyone has a different opinion, but what his opinion is, selling to people that have a really high income. So he wouldn't sell to like students, so he wouldn't necessarily immediately sell to like maybe lower income brackets. He would sell to like really wealthy backgrounds, high influence people, because he believed that they had more disposable income, and because they had more disposable income, they're more likely to purchase your product over someone who is a student and is maybe working their way up in their career. Now it works for him. I've seen other people go the other route, but I listen to his advice because when you think about companies that scale, the companies that scale are the ones that focus on selling to those brackets of people, to that kind of audience. And it works. Yeah, I'd say probably those are the things that I've taken away.
Yeah, that's interesting in terms of like, you talking about like attitude, like being like really key. And I definitely think we're in this, and it's maybe not just like this period of time, but it's becoming more and more apparent that's like it's like your attitude to like learning, your attitude to getting your hands dirty, working in different areas, and that ability to learn and grow is almost more like valuable than like having like a whole pile of academic, you know, uh, accolades behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's especially with, like AI coming in at the minute, it's just like really changing the playing field in terms of like what you can do at the early stages of your career, or I suppose like at any stage of your career if you've got that attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, neither of them asked me what degree I had. I don't think they even know if I had a degree, if I went to uni. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah. Cool. So in terms of like marketing, what do most people must understand about getting into the space today?
Just because it's oversaturated doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed. I think that's quite important because I see everyone selling a Canva course or Canva templates, or everyone can suddenly build someone else's personal brand. And I think sometimes it can feel a little bit discouraging because you're thinking, what's going to make me different? But if you are able to focus on your niche and really double down, you can still be really successful in that field or in this marketing space. The other thing is, don't overlook LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is probably one of the most underrated platforms. Everybody wants to be on TikTok, everybody wants to be on Instagram, but the key decision makers are on LinkedIn. And if you want to influence the key decision makers, you need to be on the platform, you need to be posting regularly. So I say that's another thing that's probably made a big difference to my career. Um, and if you want to be a good marketer, you have to remember that you're connecting people with other people. It's not about the copy that you're writing or the visuals. It's about connecting with another human being, and that will look different every single time. That may not look like a video, it may not look like copywriting, it may not look like a sold product. Sometimes it looks like a message, sometimes it looks like a community event. And that's why there's been a massive shift in the marketing industry from like, you know, selling to having a community of people that all like the same kinds of things, that have similar values and want to talk about this thing. So Saturday Project does it. So they sell, there's a company that I'm in love with. I'm like honestly begging them to like take me or something. And they sell salad, a really, really good salad. I love them. I buy them all the time. They've now created a running group for anyone that, likes to eat salad and have a run. And I think marketing is so much more than just selling a product or promoting a product. Now it's all about connecting people and building a strong community around those values, not the product itself, but those values. That's what's making the difference right now.
And so apart from the salad company or like that sort of community aspect,
Mhm.
what's been like the most creative thing that you've seen in marketing to like make that human connection?
Oh, I've seen lots of different things recently. Um, that's built a better human connection. Oh, I didn't want to go back to Stephen, but I'm gonna have to go back there. Um,
That's okay.
they've created um a product around the diary of a CEO. So it's called the conversation cards. I'm not in my house, or else I would show you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd show you my set of conversation cards that I got from working there. But essentially, they've created conversation cards, and I guess what they're trying to do is help people to have the conversations that Stephen has on the podcast with the guests. You can have it in your house. So that was a really fun activation. Oh, and what they did when I was there, they had a run club where they gave out the conversation cards so that you could build relationships as you were running and talk about the podcast episodes that you like or build deeper relationships. There are also really simple ways of doing it. And it's honestly just as simple as creating a piece of content that your audience can relate to. So like Curry's PC World does a really good job of like creating relatable content around Gen Z, but then also just for really fun and silly and fresh and relatable. So there are a couple of different ways that you can do it, but I think if you can prioritize human connection over getting your product across, you're already winning.
Mm. Definitely, especially but like I think this matters even more when everybody's online, it's all digital, and I've actually been listening to a few podcasts about the impact of like losing like the normal connection that you normally have with like meeting people, in public because everything is, a lot of stuff is online. So I can definitely see like stuff like that doing really well, and especially if you've got a product that really promotes that, like your salad company that does the salad and running. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, cool. Yeah, the conversation cards. Um, definitely recommend them. They're great.
yeah. They're
Um,
really, really good. Really good.
yeah. All right. So, what advice do you give most often to people that are early in their careers, so like maybe in their early 20s, and they want to break into the space, so like in the marketing?
I'd say a couple of different things. I'd say make sure that you're coming into the marketing space because you want to, not just because it looks fancy and glamorous. Everyone's job, or like I guess the newer jobs at the moment, being an influencer, being a creator, running a business even, or having a side hustle, it all looks very sexy. It all looks very like, oh my gosh, I have this and I can get free products and it looks glamorous. But there is a lot of hard work, a lot of data, a lot of research, a lot of having to love the job or having to love the passion of it or to love parts of it in order for you to do a good job of it. So if you want to come into the space, I'd first say, you know, test the waters first, do a couple of posts, do an internship, maybe not with Flight Studio because they still don't offer internships, but like you could do it in and then another organization, do some work experience to see how you feel about it before you jump into it. And then once you are certain that this is the space that you want to grow into, then I'd say start off by following a couple of different accounts. So I follow Pretty Little Marketer, I follow Because of Marketing because they kind of keep me up to date with what's going on in the industry. A big part of marketing is experimenting, learning new things, testing the water, um, trying new things. And I think that's the beauty of it all. There's no black or white. It's not accounting where, there's a negative. There's always something that you can learn from. So I'd say get used to iterating, get used to making mistakes, get used to, spelling mistakes in your copywriting. That's all okay because the entire beauty of marketing is that you can actually instill your own personality, your own opinion into any project that you're doing. And that's what makes it fun. So I think that's probably a really big part, just knowing that great marketing doesn't come from doing the same thing every time or focusing on one thing. It comes from expanding and trying out new things and being creative and learning from different styles of copywriting and all those fun bits in between.
Or I keep hearing this like almost persistent thread and some of the things that you're talking about. That's that 1% thing. Like just try stuff, make mistakes, iterate, and also just taking that risk. So what's like in your career so far? What's been a belief or an approach that you've outgrown in your work?
Do you say that I've outgrown or that, sorry, could
That
you mind repeating yourself?
Yeah, that you've outgrown. So like maybe like like a belief or an approach that's you've had earlier in your career and now it's like
Yeah.
right you've outgrown it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I like that question. I'm probably still trying, but I've done a better job at it. But I've outgrown the idea of being perfect. I am a high achiever. I'm an overachiever. And when you're an overachiever, you usually are cursed with the idea of being a perfectionist and wanting things to look perfect every single time. And it's terrible. It's really, really bad, actually. I've really grown out of wanting things to be perfect and accepted that my flawed elements can come in so many different ways. They can come in mistakes that I've made. They can come in copy that I've done on a post and maybe I didn't put a capital letter or full stop at the end, or they can come in going to a project and not feeling fully confident, but just doing my best. Being perfect is such a myth. It doesn't exist. And I think I just had to accept within myself that I'm actually not perfect. I can try to be and strive, but I actually just strive to finish. I don't strive to be perfect. I strive to complete things. Um, because perfection just comes from doing something over and over again. And if you're new to something, like I was new to personal branding last year and I wanted my content to be really, really good and perfect. But you can't be perfect if you're new because you've never done it before. So I've come to really accept that things aren't always going to be sexy. Things aren't always going to be perfect. And that's the beauty of the journey. And I've really had to like let that go. And my mentors have really been beating it out of me, the idea of like always having to be on point. Sometimes I'll post something on LinkedIn, like one of a usual post that I do on a day-to-day basis, and I'll post it incomplete knowing that it's going to be in that state and I can update it later and I can change the copy and it's going to be okay. But yeah, really letting go of the idea of perfection will make you a lot happier. And I it took me a while to learn that, unfortunately, but we are closer than where we were before.
just those small continuous improvement, those small little steps.
Yeah.
I can definitely see how that can be harder as you become, more specialist in certain parts of your skill sets. And when you get into something new, it can be maybe intimidating that you're not the experts and you're going to make mistakes, and yeah. So just leave that behind.
And if you're not making mistakes, then you're not really learning. You're not
Because
really learning.
that's like that risk taking, that feeling uncomfortable, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Cool. So you talk a lot about well, you mentioned it earlier, like having the confidence, or maybe appear like confidence, when you grab that mic, and even when you do things today, what does it actually look like to build confidence from scratch?
What is it like to build what from scratch?
Confidence.
Very ugly.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty process. I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think people's lack of confidence doesn't come necessarily from themselves. It comes from looking a certain way. Like it comes from looking bad. It comes from looking like you don't know what to do. It comes from the fear of how people are going to perceive you. Because when you look at a child that can't ride a bike, they're not
Mm,
embarrassed that they can't ride a bike. They know they can't. That's why they're learning. When you become an adult, suddenly we're trained to think that if we look like we don't know what we're doing, it means that we're incompetent. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's because you're new to the journey, and competence comes with time. I think as we've become adults, we're becoming more and more unforgiving of the fact that we're still learning. And just because you're not a child doesn't mean that the learning stops. It just means it looks different now that you're a lot older. So it's
mm.
unfortunate that building confidence will always look ugly. I don't think it ever really looks pretty. I don't think it ever looks nice, because when you're building anything, the behind the scenes is the messy part. It's only when you're finished that it looks really nice and shiny. I did a keynote, my first keynote ever, in front of an entire auditorium of people in a theater. And I had never done public speaking before. And it was my first talk. And the reason why I accepted it, even though I know I had zero experience, is because I knew that after doing it once, that was all I needed. So I think if you're afraid of doing something, I would say just do it once and then do it again and then do it again. And the more times you do it, the more reps you do, the more confidence you'll feel. Confidence comes from doing. Anxiety comes from not doing. So if you want to combat your anxiety, just do more of it until the anxiety leaves. When I first did my LinkedIn post, I was scared I wasn't going to get any likes because I thought, oh, this is going to be crap. No one's going to like my content. Who cares? X, Y, and Z. I did it. I did it again. I was anxious every time. And now I can just wake up and just do a quick post and I don't feel anything. But the question is, are you willing to look ugly at the beginning? Because the cost of entry to anything to be successful, or anything you want to be successful in, is embarrassment. Are you willing to be embarrassed for a short period of time until you become a master? And often the answer is yes, but in your heart you're saying no, because you won't post, or you won't go ahead and do this, or you won't put yourself forward because the idea of being rejected is not nice. So I think people actually battle with themselves in their minds, but once they overcome it, they succeed.
And I think it's like you mentioned, maybe when mince the words here, but you talked about this, the work, it's the work outside those, events where you're getting up to speak or you're trying something new. It's the hard work that's done there. And I suppose, like, from the outside looking in, a lot of people don't see that, and they don't see all the feelings slash learnings on the way up to you being on stage and appearing super confident, even though you're still maybe a wee bit nervous inside. A lot of people don't see that, and they maybe feel they have to go from no experience to being able to speak like that, or do whatever that thing is at that level.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Alrighty. So talked a bit about confidence. So you mentioned about collaboration. And I'm just even thinking about what we're just talking about there now about confidence, and thinking about Flight Club. Uh, that culture that you had in Flight Club must have really supported the ability to grow your confidence and doing certain things as you know as an intern?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really big on putting their team forward. And I think to be honest, it's not a unique approach, but I have seen that a lot of newer companies, they almost use their team as influencers for that company. So you'll see like Will, who's Steven's personal videographer, has an entire page focused on the fact that he films Steven on a regular basis, or his LinkedIn is all about capturing content for Steven. Grace Andrews, who is the marketing and brand director, all of her content is focused on putting that side of, her career forward. So whenever they internally have an event where one of their team members is going to be on stage and speaking, they are so quick to support it because that team knows that, one, we're behind you, your confidence matters, but they're really big on putting you forward. And if you have no choice but to be put forward, you're going to force yourself to become confident, whether you like it or not. So I think, making your team members, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a CEO, if you're a founder, or even if you're just a manager, making sure that it's a culture that you hone within your team, that will make such a big difference to the value that people place on your company, and then the value that your team puts on themselves. Like, I can only imagine what it felt like to be Grace Miller, who's the head of experimentation. She spoke at the podcast show. The whole team came just to support her. It's going to make a difference.
Oh, definitely. When you can see those familiar faces in the crowd, the people you've like built a connection with too, you know, you've been
Yeah.
doing plays with maybe or playing football with, yeah, definitely makes a difference. So like in terms of the collaboration, and you're working on these like different diverse teams. What's like have you got like a go-to approach to facilitate that collaboration, especially when you're in the creative space?
I'm very quick to reach out actually, and see what we can do together. Um, I think in the marketing space, collaboration is very natural. I think if you're coming from a different background, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But I think the key thing to do if you're looking to collaborate with somebody in your industry, in your spaces, just number one, make sure that there is value added. So you can collaborate with somebody and it's only valuable if you're both benefiting, because I wouldn't necessarily collaborate with, I don't know, not Metro Bank, enterprise car company, because we have nothing in common. But I think just focusing on the fact that the person you're collaborating with you'll both gain value from it. And sometimes collaboration looks different. Sometimes it looks like a legitimate collaborative post on Instagram. Sometimes collaboration is attending an event and then doing shared values across both platforms on LinkedIn. So I think as long as there's added value and it makes sense to your niche, then it's definitely worth doing. And it's just as simple as saying hello. Like, I've worked with we just did a big event with SEMrush with one of my clients about a month or two ago. And that made a lot of sense. And we collaborated with marketing influencers on LinkedIn, but not the ones on TikTok or necessarily on Instagram, because that's not the niche that we're focusing on. So I think just make sure that you know what you're doing in terms of what value you want to add, what value you want to give to your audience, what you want people to take away from it, and then collaborate with people who have the same values as you, because then it will make sense across the board.
And so the, what you do is like mass like it requires a lot of creative energy as well as like just even collaborating with people, like doing that research. There's a lot of energy put into that space, and I know creativity, it's not something you can have all the time. How do you manage like or how do you balance that? I suppose, and I suppose what I'm trying to get at is like it can be very easy to burn out,
Yeah.
especially when you're in working with startups or like working in any type of position where you're trying to like grow your career.
Mhm.
How do you balance that and stay creative?
Yeah, I think and it's a real thing, like creative burnout and all those things. Um, a few things, and I got this information from Joe Bird, who was ex Lounge and ex Gymshark. And essentially she told me that you have to have a varied diet. And diet, not in terms of what you eat, but diet in terms of what you consume. So like I consume a lot of Diary of a CEO content for obvious reasons. But I have to actively make an effort to consume other pieces of content, new podcasts, bad podcasts too. You learn a lot from them because you learn what not to do.
Mm.
And then I learn from, so I have a varied diet and when it comes to content that I'm consuming. And then I think the other thing is when you are offline, you actively have to be offline. So now because I work in social media and I work in marketing full time, I can't use Instagram for like pleasure. I can't use it for entertainment. I cannot doom scroll on a Saturday afternoon because I need to actively scroll for my Monday morning kind of like download to see what's going on in the world of like content creation and influencing space and marketing. So like when you are offline, be offline because it for anybody else, this is entertainment. For you, it's not. For me, it's not. I actually have to go outside and have fun outside away from internet and then when I'm online, I have to be really focused to consume content that benefits me.
Cool. Right, we are drawing to an end. We've got the quick fire round, but before we do, I've got a question. We've got a couple of shout outs as well. So amazing wisdom, Ruth. Feel the fear and do it anyway. There's a couple of great. I've been taking down notes in terms of like quotes and sayings that I'm going to be
Yeah.
reusing for sure. But I like that. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Neil Martin's got a question for you. So we were talking about speed talking being a superpower. Did you
Mhm.
really have a self-awareness that that was a superpower, or I suppose did somebody, or did you learn that later, or did somebody like bring that to your attention?
I think after that day happened, well, to be fair, I already before I met Steven, I knew that I spoke fairly quickly.
Mm.
I didn't know how quick I could speak until that day. But I knew that I spoke fairly quickly. And I think after I watched the video back, I was like, wow, like I talk really fast when I'm scared. And then I think the first time I met Timothy, I think I was speaking a little bit faster than my natural tone or my natural speed. So I think I think I didn't know until that day. But now I'm aware of it. I'm just more prepared. And I've actually had lots of public speaking training now as well to kind of mitigate the speed at which I speak when I'm scared. I think also I'm not afraid again of speaking fast when I'm scared because I talk about it all the time as my weakness, but then I think people will see it and know that I'm being authentic and they can tell that I'm being honest. I think when my last day when I spoke to Stephen, I did ask him why he hired me in the first place. I thought, this is very random on your end, but like, why did you do it? And he said, because I could tell that you were telling the truth. Like I didn't lie. And you could see it because I was speaking fast. You could tell I was nervous. You could tell that I meant what I was saying. So there is an element of like, just come as you are. Like, don't be perfect. And just if you speak fast when you're scared, then fair, because people will feel the emotion behind what you're saying.
I speak fast because I'm Irish, and I always have.
Okay.
And this is me slowing it way down too.
Yeah.
I normally speak fast when I get excited, but it's like that balance of like excitement and nervousness. I feel like that's like a thin line. Um, I love that, just be yourself. We've got one more question from Jack McPherson. I hope I'm pronouncing your second name right, Jack. So Jack's a high school student who's following you on LinkedIn. And his question is, when you create your online course, could I please attend?
Oh, that's so sweet. Absolutely. Maybe soon on Teachable or something like that.
On Teachable?
Maybe.
Yeah. Cool. Looking forward to that. Right. So we've got some quick fire rounds and then we'll wrap up. Ready. So what's the biggest lesson you've learned so far
In life.
in general? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can set the boundaries of it.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think the biggest lesson okay, the biggest lesson I've learned so far is fortune favors the brave. I feel like I have quotes for everything, but it's not my fault. I listen to a lot of podcasts and it just feeds into my life. But yeah, no, I think fortune favors the brave. I was told the fortune favors the brave by my manager. The day that I told them I was going to quit and take the job with Steven. And instead of being like really negative about it and just feeling a bit like, oh, why are you leaving the company for an internship that's not even promised for a whole year? Like, what's the meaning of this? And she just said, no, fortune favors the brave, and you never know what will come out of this. Now that I work for myself, I'm really grateful that I took that risk because clearly fortune did favor those who were brave enough to make the decision to do that. So yeah, that's probably one of the big lessons that I've learned.
And that's really great to hear that from a manager that you're saying, hey, I'm leaving as well. Yeah. Alrighty. So next one. What's a mantra or a quote that you love by? And you can't use fortune favors the brave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't use fortune favors the brave. I really should have held that out for this
You
question.
should have held that back.
Yeah, but it's okay. I'm sure I've got another one. I'd say don't focus on the noise, focus on the signal. So that comes from the podcast with Mr. Wonderful, and he talks a little bit about doing loads of work, but none of it has real meaning. And I think everyone has this in their role. You can do your job, but not every single task in your job actually propels you forward. Some jobs are just admin based, or some jobs don't actually help you learn or help you move forward. So I'd say don't focus on the noise, focus on the signal because the signal will always move you forward.
Okay. What's a piece of career advice you wish you'd gotten earlier?
Um, Sacrifice your salary for great opportunities because great opportunities only come once. Well, that's not true. They come, but don't miss them when they come. Sometimes I think the issue is that when you're a young person, you always want to get the most amount of money, but sometimes getting the experience is so much better. And that's not even just specifically with working for Steven. I've dropped my salary, I've had multiple salary cuts just to get to work with specific people or to be in the right rooms or to meet a specific CEO, and I'll do it again. Because the money comes after, and the money comes from the passion, the money comes from the hard work, and sometimes the money comes from the opportunity. So don't always be so focused on the salaries, focus on who you're working with, the people that you're around, because that also can prepare your career much more forward than any amount of money could.
Mm. And finally, who's someone that you've not yet collaborated with, but you'd love to?
Ooh, not collaborated with, but would love to. The list is becoming shorter and shorter because I've met so many people now. I think probably Emma Greed. She's like a high flyer that I'd love to meet. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I'm gonna try to at some point. But yeah, I would say Emma Greed.
Looking forward to seeing that collaboration. Ruth, thanks so much for your time today. And see, before we close out, where can people follow you, follow your journey? How can they reach out? Have you got any socials other than LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok now. I'm on Instagram. And I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's my favorite, but yeah, follow me on Instagram at Ruth Ameku, on TikTok at Ruth Ameku. And if you have any questions, just drop me a DM.
Perfect. I don't think we have, no, we've got no more questions. Yeah, Ruth, thanks for joining us. And folks, for everybody that's joined as well, we really appreciate your support. We've got a couple of other events coming up. We've got next week, we've got Karina Bernacki, who is an expert in like people change, works with scale up startups. So make sure to join in. And yeah, give us a follow on LinkedIn if you're not doing so already. Folks, thanks very much, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ruth.
Screaming lyrics like they're soldiers.